IBM is down slightly in today's trading session, but keep in mind the stock is up more than 11% year to date. And yesterday, Big Blue reported a 7.7% jump in sales. That was after the close. You know, we broke it down for you. Those numbers, though, have some analysts saying a tech rebound is gathering steam as many businesses are upgrading computer systems for the first time since the recession. And then another big tech name, of course, just about an hour away from Apple's earnings. Joining us now to talk tech is Sanford C. Bernstein research analyst Toni Sacconaghi. Based on data compiled by Bloomberg, he is one of the most accurate analysts on Apple. We call him a Bloomberg best. Tony, great to have you here on Street Smart. Let's talk a little bit just initially about IBM. Folks were worried about some of the contract signings. Was that reason enough to be concerned in your view?
I think ultimately there is some reason for concern because of the signings. IBM put up a really good quarter, a typical IBM quarter, very solid numbers. They raised their estimates for the year. This is what investors have come to expect from IBM. But services signings are really an indicator of future revenues, and they were considerably weaker than most people expected. So at the margin, that raises concerns for investors. You may not see it next quarter, but down the road, investors are incrementally worried that these signings may portend lower services growth going forward. But
not enough yet to downgrade the stock or anything. You've got a market perform rating on it, so you're going to wait and see what happens.
We are. We actually recently lowered our rating from outperform about a month ago, in part largely because the stock's had a great run. And we do believe that we believed and still believe that there wouldn't be enough incremental catalysts to get it to a significant level of outperformance from here.
Tony, let's talk about Apple. That's going to be the big one today. It's going to be the big one tomorrow morning when trading gets underway. What do you think is kind of the key metric? Is it the impact of Japan? Is it the iPad? Is it the iPhone? What is it here?
I think investors feel reasonably comfortable about this quarter. I think it's all about next quarter and what they say. There's been worries that iPhone 5 is going to be pushed out a quarter. It's typically a new iPhone comes in June. There's a worry that that's going to be pushed out. There's a worry about rising component prices in light of Japan. There's a worry about Japan demand following the earthquake there. And so everything is about next quarter and less so about this quarter. I think the results this quarter are going to be very strong. And investors are going to want to focus in on what's the gross margin expectation. Apple typically guides very conservatively, so they're going to be focused on that. I think a gross margin guidance number of 35 or better is likely going to be viewed very positively. Something like 33 or lower is probably going to be viewed cautiously. And I think Apple's tone just around, what the supply-demand imbalance is going to be very important.
Do you think those supply imbalances are going to be a significant problem for Apple? Maybe this last quarter or maybe going forward?
You know, what we've heard from major tech companies today is that component availability is not an issue. Apple is the 800-pound gorilla in securing components that they need.
So people don't want to mess with them, do they?
No, and they have a lot of power and a lot of volume. So, for instance, we think they account for about 25% or more of all the flash or NAND memory capacity consumption in the world. So they're very, very powerful, and we don't expect it to be disruptive to them.
You know, one thing that we've been focusing on today, Tony, is this Apple-Samsung lawsuit. And apparently, Apple disclosed some of their kind of financial results. They talked a little bit about iPad sales, and they talked about 4.21 million iPads sold during the fiscal second quarter, less than the 6.1 million average estimate. If we get a number like 4.2 million, is that going to be a disappointment to you?
Certainly it would be. I mean, I would question taking directly from that lawsuit because Apple was very vague in its language. It said by March 2011. Does that mean March 1st? Does that mean March 26th when the quarter ended? Does that mean March 31st? I find it incredulous to believe that Apple could have only shipped 4.2 million iPads when last quarter they shipped over 7 million, and at every major urban store in the country there continue to be lines every morning.
Just got about 30 seconds, Tony. What about Steve Jobs? I bring it up because there was a story earlier this month about Steve authorizing his first biography to be published next year. Of course, it brought up questions about succession. Just quickly, I mean, is that another issue for the company at this point?
I think longer term it's an issue. You can't not have an iconic visionary leader like Steve Jobs and not expect a longer term impact. In the next 1 to 2 years, most of their product pipeline is baked. He's still involved with the day-to-day, and we feel pretty secure about both their product pipeline and their competitive position.
Got to run. Tony, always good to get your input on Apple and IBM as well. Thanks so much. I know you're going to be a busy guy later on. Toni Sacconaghi, everybody from Sanford C. Bernstein.